What's going on, everybody? Today we got another video. It says the American dream is anti-blackness. Seems like a political video. Let's see what this man has to say. Maybe he'll have a point, maybe he won't.
I already said this in a video, but they stopped showing it to people because it got too controversial. So let me say it in the plainest terms possible. The American dream is anti-blackness. It always has been. The promise is no matter how broke or destitute you are when you come over here, when you arrive in this country, there will be a class that is designated to be worse off than you are permanently. That is the African American subclass of this country. Historically, those are the floorboards on which America built its immigration population. So the Italians came over, the Irish came over, Jewish people came over. They weren't even considered white, but they earned their way into the cult of whiteness by shedding themselves of thousands of years of culture, displaying anti-blackness, and then being accepted into whiteness. The same pyramid scheme slash hazing process has been proposed to every immigrant group that has come into this country. East Asians, South Asians, even Africans have been proposed this same concept. But again, because there are so many layers and hidden clauses to the concept of race, people who phenotypically are black participate in this game and try to earn a baptism into the cult of whiteness in some cases. And they are rudely surprised to find out that they do not get accepted. And moreover, over the course of time, being in the context of America, as they lose some level of connection with their ancestral practices, potentially, they find themselves essentially identifying as African American. And that's not a bad thing. I just think, man, I'm not even going to try to keep going. But yeah, you should go find that video. Like, it's still there.
I agree with this young man. I like where he went with it. I was just on a date recently and I was speaking to a female and I was telling her how white people are 60% of the population who write the bills, who do all the voting. There's 70% of the population that listens to hip hop music. So whatever we see in hip hop music, it's because it's what white people want to see. But the idea of America, going back to what he's saying, is everything that's white is good and everything that's black is bad. Which is why the black people's music has to have such negative vibes and negativity to it. I mean, the women are ratchet, the guys are gangsters, and it's not like there aren't good artists out there. I mean, you got your Joyner Lucas, J. Cole's, Lupe Fiasco, Kanye West. You know, you got those type of artists, but they're not the ones who are getting blasted on the radio. Right now, it's all ratchet, sexy red, gangster female sounding like a man, Glorilla. And then you go over to the pop station and you hear these happy, positive songs because, yes, I listen to the pop stations. I'd rather hear happy, feminine white women than some masculine black women. So I listen to the pop stations and I'm like, why is their music like this and our music like this? Because I know there's plenty of good music out there. I find it all the time. R&B music. But it boils down to that 70% of white people who listen to African American music. Even at work, when I hear them listening to stuff, they're listening to gangster rap because this is how they want to see us. They don't want to see us in the light of being the educated intellectual. They say, no, we save that for our other European counterparts. And this is what perpetuates the violence and the negativity in our culture. Because America wants to see it, and then they project it, and the youngins consume it, and then they become it. And before they know it, they got felonies because they decided to be a gangster like they see on TV or hear on the radio, and now they can't get jobs, and now they're stuck in a cycle. But let's get on to the next video.
The answer is not more police like the rest of them will say. It is young people.
Why not?
Because if we don't start tackling the root problem, we're going to be here 10, 20 years. If we keep on talking about policing, we already have lots of police officers, but what we don't have is youth investment.
So how do we
These
deter
young
that
people-
11-year-old
but-
Representative Buckner reference?
Listen, these young people are out here carjacking. They could be building the cars, but we don't have investment and institutions that invest in them. These young people are out here playing with guns, but they can have hammers, but we're not putting trade back in our school system. We have to do what actually is working to put our young people on the right path, and it's not going to be more police.
And it's not like they don't have the money for it. I mean, they write all these bills and they send 60 billion to Israel. They send 60 billion to Ukraine. But what do they give the American population, the African American population, that they know they've put at a disadvantage? They just threw out there after so much negativity. African Americans collectively have PTSD from what America has put them through. And then the immigrants come in here and they get free housing. They get freaking, I think it was $13,000 a month in New York for food and food stamps. They get to live in luxury hotels. And there's people in America, American citizens, who are struggling. There's millions, if not billions of dollars going to these immigrant programs, but they're not investing properly into African American society. They know that it's going to require some investment in order to turn things around. And if they raise the bar for the people at the bottom, it also raises the bar for the rest of society. Everyone gets to live peacefully. Everyone gets to live in a good society. And that's why I say America is not the greatest country in the world, because America does not take care of all of its citizens. America only reacts when it affects white people. But let's get back to the next video.
Didn't Gaddafi try to give him like $1 billion and the United States blocked it?
Of course, brother. Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, man, I'll be pleased with our brother, was not some dictator. See, it's funny how the media will make you look like a damn monster. Oh, well, I'll just say this. In Libya, number one, Libya under Colonel Muammar Gaddafi had zero debt. They had free education, free health care. If you wanted to go to school abroad, they would give you the money and pay for the tuition, and they would pay for your room and board. When you got married, they would give the family $5,000. If you wanted to own a farm, they would give you all the tractors, all the seeds, and the land to till that farm. Gaddafi and the country of Libya was one of the only countries on the planet that had zero debt, was completely free to do whatever they wanted to do. And that's why they called him a dictator, because he would not allow America to have access to that wealth. He was going to create a joint currency using the wealth under the feet of the Libyan people, the gold, the oil, etc., and the wealth of the nearly 50 other countries in Africa, and come together to create a African currency. That money, based on the African worth, would have bankrupt China's yuan. It would have bankrupt America's dollar. It would have bankrupt the European pound. So that was removing total neocolonialism from the planet. And they said, we need to get rid of this nigga now. Because if he comes to power with those other 50 countries in Africa, we will have to bow to them. And we do not want to bow to them.
To keep my people free from colonial domination, from thieves who would steal from us. Now, I am under attack by the biggest force in military history. My little African son, Obama, wants to kill me, to take away the freedom of our country, to take away our free housing, our free medicine, our free education, our free food, and replace it with American-style thievery, called capitalism. But all of us in the third world know what that means. It means corporations run the countries, run the world, and the people suffer. So there is no alternative for me. I must make my stand, and if Allah wishes, I shall die by following his path, the path that has made our country rich with farmland, with food and health, and even allowed us to help our African and Arab brothers and sisters.
See, that's deep right there. If there's one thing you get from this video, I want to say that there's a book called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It's written by a white guy from America who was going to these countries and exploiting their resources with the help of the U.S. government and all these corporations. And I don't want to speak too much on it. I just want you to read the first chapter in that book. And he speaks on Gaddafi and his situation as well. And it'll open your eyes to a whole different way in which your country works. But other than that, we all know that the objective of the West is to keep the Africans poor. Whether you go to Haiti, whether it's in Africa, there's always intervention from the West because they want to keep Africa poor so they can have cheap labor. They could get the minerals, the gold, the oil, whatever they're over there fighting for in Congo that's keeping these Apple computers going. They want all these minerals for next to nothing, because if you raise the cost of raw material, then the cost of everything goes up, and that depletes the man on top. Is going to have to pay more, and he's going to become less wealthy. So in this book that I just spoke of, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, he says to solve this problem that Africa's having with the West, every African country, every black country needs to make a minimum wage with the dollar. Say nobody works unless we're getting paid this much money, whether it's $5 an hour, $3 an hour, but you know over there they're paying these guys 18 cents a day in places like Haiti. So, but let's just get into the next video.
The Russians and the Chinese actually have a plan that says by promoting your independence and your economic health, you become more stable and secure, and you become better business partners for us who aren't seeking permanent war. We want permanent peace. Burkina Faso, their upstart captain of a junta leader went to St. Petersburg last year and met with Vladimir Putin. It was a pretty curious meeting because he doesn't shake hands with anybody. His whole thing is a fist bump. Vladimir Putin came out and he shook his hand, sign of respect. But he sat there, and I remember watching this. He said, "We need a nuclear reactor," and I'm like, "Good God, why would you come and tell Vladimir Putin you need a nuclear reactor? That's pretty, ambitious of you." And the Russians, Vladimir said, "We'll think about it." And the Russians came back and said, "Yep, we're going to build you a nuclear reactor." Russia's going to build a nuclear reactor in Burkina Faso. Why? Well, because if you build this nuclear reactor, you now can electrify parts of Burkina Faso that electricity never touched. And when you start to electrify things, amazing things happen. Life springs forward. It's going to come to life. They're going to become independent. They're going to build a middle class. All those things we claim you need for a viable democracy, which we were denying them. We were there, America, France were there for decades, and we denied them this. We brought nothing but poverty, wars, destruction. In a 3-year span, 3 years, Russia and China have turned that entire area around. Africa is going to become the engine of BRICS. The United States can't handle that. That's a direct threat to us. But we've been sort of pushed from that area. But watch, we're going to make problems.
This is what I've been telling everybody that I know. Be prepared for a recession, a never-ending recession, because once BRICS gets going, you see, he said what I said. He said what you already know, that the West has been exploiting Africa, but you have these new nations, these BRICS nations coming up. And me, as a black man, I have to be happy when I see African countries doing good and being treated correctly. And these African countries see it as well. And they're going to adjust their policies towards the other side. All of their minerals and raw materials are going to go over there, while us over here in the West, things are going to get a lot more expensive. And then they're going to get rid of the dollar. And once they get rid of the dollar and countries start depositing their money with China and their new development bank instead of with the West and the IMF/World Bank, things are going to be completely different, because interest rates are going to lower over there because they have more money, and interest rates over here are going to skyrocket. And yes, this will probably happen within the next 3 years, a major recession that there's no returning from. You already see the way things are now with the food increases, with the rent increases, with the mortgage interest rates increasing. Everything in America is increasing. And then on top of that, AI taking jobs from truckers to coders, you might have a problem. But I appreciate y'all listening to me, and we will get to the next video tomorrow.